Hello, my name is Corey, and I will be presenting the ideas and philosophies of Thomas Hobbes from his book, The Leviathan, specifically chapters 13 and 14. Before I begin, a little background on The Leviathan. It was published in 1651, and it is one of the most influential books regarding social contract theory. It is four social contracts and absolute sovereignty. Its historical context is the English Civil War, where this war wasn't just fought over who should rule England, Scotland, and Ireland, but how they should be ruled, so the actual structure of the government. So with that being said, let's begin with chapter 13. So Hobbes comes out first and foremost saying that all men are intrinsically equal. This is both in body and in mind, even though it might not physically look so, or based on test scores it might not look so. Everyone is intrinsically equal. Now, the key point that Hobbes points out that makes us really equal is our cockiness. Now, Hobbes doesn't put it as our cockiness, but it's when men are too concerned of their own wisdom that they don't believe that anyone else can be as wise as they are, and it's vice versa. Everyone's only concerned about their wisdom because they can't see how wise other people are, and this is what really levels the playing field. So this is what leads us to the second key point in Hobbes' argument. That's the three principal causes of discord, discord being disagreements between people. They are competition, distrust, and glory. So for competition, it's gain for oneself. Hobbes puts it in terms of an intruder. So if you have something that I want, I'm going to come and get it to gain it for myself. And it just becomes a cycle, because that is how people gain what they want, is by taking it from others. The second is distrust, which is in terms founded for safety. So you need to distrust everyone in order to remain safe. And Hobbes brings up the point that you should strike first, because if you're in a defensive position, you'll get worn out faster and probably die faster. So you should always strike first in order to protect what is yours. And then third, we have glory, which is based in reputation. We want people to value us the way that we value ourselves. So we're always trying to look better in other people's eyes. And also, if anyone disregards our glory, most of the time men try and find that value back through violence. So these three principal causes of discord is what leads us into our ideas of war. Hobbes says that common power is really the only thing that can keep men from war. And I would like to include this quote that most accurately describes this idea that Hobbes is presenting. And it states, "So the temporal element in the notion of when there is war is like the temporal element in when there is bad weather. What constitutes bad weather is not a rain shower or two, but an inclination to rain through many days together. Similarly, what constitutes war is not actual fighting, but a known disposition to fight during a time when there is no assurance to the contrary. All other time is peace." So with this quote, it kind of leads us to the fact that if there's a constant disposition to fight, there is no structure. So when we're in times of war, there is no structure, so there is no reason to essentially do anything, because everyone is so scared that there is going to be people and things coming after them to gain what they have. This is where the famous line that everyone knows the Leviathan for, that if we live a life without structure, our lives are solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Hobbes also asks us to reflect on how we live our lives if we're opposed to what he says, and that even applies to nowadays in 2021, where we all lock our doors. We're so scared that someone's going to come and rob us, anything like that, kill us because of what we have. I mean, this was written in the 1650s, 1640s, and it still applies almost 400 years later. But Hobbes does give us a way to get out of this type of life, and it's by it's through our passions and our reasons, with our passions being fear of death and desire for comfortable living, and the hard work that we have to do to get there. And with our reasons, it's items in peace treaties men agree on, which leads us to chapter 14 with our laws of nature. So in chapter 14, Hobbes discusses the first two laws of nature. The first being to seek peace and follow it, and the second is being willing to lie down everything in peace and self-defense if they require it. So although these are laws of nature, not everyone will follow them. That's basically what we discussed in chapter 13 with the true nature of man. And although in this chapter, Hobbes introduces another true nature of man, and that is living in fear. So the two natures of man that Hobbes presents is everyone is equal, but also everyone lives out of fear. So this is what leads us to the golden rule that Hobbes describes, and that do unto others as you want others to do unto you. Something that we know we all know and probably, hopefully, live our lives by. So in using that rule in these laws of nature, it should lead to structure and a more civilized and peaceful life. So in the latter half of this chapter, it discusses contracts and covenants and the rules and regulations that go through it. If you can have it with God, if you can have it with brutish beasts, which you technically can't. In it, how contracts become void and valid, and these contracts are what helps us bring us to peace, making these promises with each other in order to have structure. So with that so the focal point, I believe, in this reading, the most important part of the argument is kind of the transition between the brutish life that we live and into a civil society, leading from the endless violence that men naturally tend to have into a society of structure and prosperity, and so that things can get done is really what Hobbes leans on in this reading. And it's in our passions and our reasons that we lead to this. We don't want to live in fear. We don't want to live uncomfortably. We want to be able to live our lives without constantly thinking that today's the day that someone's going to come and kill me, or today's the day that I'm just going to die. And so even though Hobbes presents these laws of nature, since there is really no structure, the laws of nature aren't really a common power. And so that's why there needs to be one common power in order to unite and bring structure. Since all men are equal, there must be one that steps above, either that a government or a god, a religion, anything like that. There must be one sovereign power that controls the structure and can unite all of these men and stop the violence. So the reason it's important to have that one sovereign power is because if everyone is still going through the three principles of discord, the competition, the distrust, and the glory, it's a cycle of never-ending competition and violence and just brutish living while everyone's trying to gain an upper hand on each other. So even though this is the key argument, I'm also kind of going to bash it at the same time. Just because if all men are intrinsically equal, then how is it that someone can rise above and be the one sovereign thing to unite us all? I mean, even though he does include God, it says that the only way that you can make a covenant with God is those who speak through with God. But if everyone is created equal and everyone is intrinsically equal, so how can we have those people to get there? The second thing that I kind of have against this argument is the passage in which Hobbes speaks of savages in the Americas that have no government at all and basically are just run by these small families. So before there was ever structure, I mean, before ancient Greece, before ancient Rome, all of this, that's all that there was these small familial just factions that led to society and led to structure. So why does he compare the savages living right now, well, back in his time, in that brutish manner, and to compare them to what they have now? Although these savages can lead forth into structure, although they, in their own sense, already have structure. So, really, what I disagree with Hobbes, and although we talked about this in the last class with Machiavelli, that all men are naturally just basically shit, men and women, just humankind in general, that we're always out for self gain. However, I mean, I don't think it's that way. I think the true inclination of man is for structure. It's not necessarily we must have one sovereign leader for this structure, but I think naturally our natural tendency is to go towards structure, not chaos. I think this is the true issue that I have with Hobbes's argument. Although, yes, it is all, although this argument is valid, I don't believe it is sound. Because how are we to ever create structure in the first place if we're all intrinsically led towards that fear and that sense of I'm only out for myself? It doesn't quite make sense to me. But with that being said, Hobbes's argument of leading from the uncivilized life to the civilized life, it does follow in that there does need to be one commonality between everyone, and that should be the one power that unites them together. Although I do not necessarily agree with it, I do believe that man does have a natural inclination to be self-centered and to be self-loving, just kind of trying to make yourself survive. I don't believe that it is every man. If I had to guess, it'd probably be 75% to 25%. That 75% of man is selfish and 25% of man is actually selfless. But with that being said, I do think, but I do believe Hobbes makes a great argument coming from the life of being uncivilized to that structure that we need in order to prosper and actually create a well-defined means of society. So, thank you.